All right, welcome to the deep dive. We're all about taking like a mountain of information and finding those little nuggets that really help you understand things better, without just totally overloading you.
Right, you want the good stuff, the key takeaways that you can actually use.
Exactly. You value getting to that knowledge quickly, but like really understanding it too. And those aha moments, those are the best.
It's about getting to the essence.
Yes. Okay, so today we are diving deep into how people learn and how to design learning experiences that are really effective. Our guide for this is Teaching at Its Best. It's by Linda B. Nilsson. It's really geared toward college instructors, but honestly, so much of it is applicable to, well, anyone.
I mean, think about it. If you are training people at work, even just trying to learn something new yourself.
Or explaining something to, like, a friend.
Yeah, exactly. These principles are, well, they're kind of universal.
So our mission here is to, like, extract those crucial points from the book that'll make a real difference for you, no matter what kind of learning you're doing.
So we're focusing on what helps make learning stick
Yeah. And how you can use those principles in your own life.
in your work, your hobbies, anywhere.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with something super fundamental. Understanding, who you're trying to reach.
Your audience.
Exactly. Nilsson really emphasizes knowing your students. I mean, if you're a teacher, that means things like age, socioeconomic background, whether they're full-time or part-time, all that.
Now, you might be thinking, well, I'm not a teacher. But the core idea applies like almost everywhere, even if those specific demographics aren't relevant to you.
So it doesn't matter if you're explaining a work project or, I don't know, showing someone how to use a new app.
It all comes down to understanding that person, who they are, what they know already, even their perspective. That is your crucial first step.
Yeah, I like that. So the question for you is, who are you talking to? Now, once you have a handle on that, well, then we can get into the learning process itself.
The nitty-gritty of how people learn.
Right. And Nilsson dives into like some really key principles of how we actually take in and remember new information. And it turns out our brains just kind of get some ways of learning better than others.
Some are just more efficient, really.
Way more efficient, like
Yeah.
using the right tool for the job. And one of the biggest ones is pattern recognition. So your brain, it's constantly looking for connections.
Which can be super helpful. Helps you make sense of the world.
Totally. But
Yeah.
but like Nilsson points out, this tendency can also, sometimes lead you to see patterns that aren't actually there.
Superstitions, prejudice, all kinds of things can stem from this.
Right. And this drive to find patterns, I mean, thinking about the big picture here, this is different from that deep learning that comes when you truly understand the structure of a subject.
It's not just spotting random connections. It's about getting that underlying framework of knowledge within a field.
So it's like experts can navigate those complex structures almost intuitively.
They get it.
Yeah. Okay, now another big thing your brain does is something called categorical chunking.
Categorical chunking.
Yes, basically it's grouping things based on what's similar, what's different, and how they relate.
Making those connections again.
Exactly. And the takeaway here for you is that less is more when it comes to actually processing and remembering information.
Your brain can only handle so much.
Right, like the fewer individual bits of information, the better. So like, think about learning a language. It's much easier to learn categories of words, like food or greetings.
Rather than just like a random list.
100%. So then the question becomes, how can you actively use this tendency to chunk information? And that's where visual aids can be so powerful.
So it's powerful.
Nilsson talks about graphic syllabi, concept maps, mind maps,
Diagrams.
diagrams. And these aren't just for like looks. They actually provide that structure for knowledge, making it easier to remember and recall.
Think of it like a roadmap, helping you find your way through the information.
I love that. And she even suggests for you as a learner that creating your own visuals can really solidify your understanding.
Make it your own.
Yeah, make it meaningful. Okay, another principle that's huge is spaced or distributed practice. Forget about cramming.
Please, forget about cramming. It doesn't work.
It's so much better to review things multiple times, over time, whether you're testing yourself or just going over your notes.
Way more effective for long-term memory. Think of it like learning an instrument. Practicing a little each day is better than like one huge session before performance.
100%. So for you, space practice helps strengthen those neural pathways over time.
It's like reinforcing a trail. You walk it over and over again, it becomes easier to follow.
I love that analogy. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like Hours of study, even short reviews, can make a difference in the long run.
Huge difference.
Okay, last thing on how we learn. Nilsson talks about the journey from novice to expert.
And it's not just about, knowing stuff.
It's about developing that expert-level mental organization of knowledge,
Yeah.
within a specific field.
It's about moving beyond just knowing things, facts and figures. It's about understanding how those things connect to each other.
So there's this bigger picture, this coherent framework.
Exactly.
Okay, so as you learn and your understanding grows, you also go through different stages of how you actually see knowledge itself.
Mhm.
Nilsson talks about cognitive development and this idea of overcoming dualism. So what does that even mean for you as a learner?
Well, you might notice, especially early on in learning something new, you kind of see things as black and white, right and wrong. You look to authority figures, teachers, textbooks.
Like they have all the answers.
Exactly. And you think, okay, that must be the truth.
It's like a very simplified way of seeing things, but it feels safe.
It does. But reality is much more nuanced than that.
So like there could be multiple valid interpretations, right?
Mhm.
Different perspectives on the same thing.
Absolutely. And different approaches to solving problems. The key is that these interpretations, well, they aren't all equally valid.
Right.
Each field has its own way of evaluating those different perspectives.
So the learning process, it's about helping you move beyond that initial black and white thinking.
Exactly. You start to understand that knowledge isn't always absolute, and critical thinking becomes really important. You have to evaluate different ideas based on evidence. You use the standards of that particular discipline.
I see. So it's like becoming comfortable with the gray areas.
Exactly. And Nilsson talks about how learners progress through these stages. First, they see authority figures as all-knowing. Then they realize there are different viewpoints. And eventually, they can form their own informed opinions.
Opinions based on, actual evidence and reasoning. Okay, I like that progression.
It's all about developing your ability to really engage with complexity.
So this brings us to outcome-centered learning design. What does that mean for creating better learning experiences, whether for yourself or others?
This principle is all about starting with the end in mind. So, when you're designing a learning experience, whether it's just for you, like your study session or a whole program, you need to clearly define what you want to be able to do by the end. What are your goals?
These are your learning outcomes.
Right. And there are different types of outcomes. Nilsson mentions cognitive, psychomotor, and affective outcomes.
So break those down for me.
Sure. So cognitive outcomes, they relate to like thinking and knowledge. Psychomotor are more about physical skills. And then affective outcomes are all about your emotions and attitudes.
Okay, that makes sense. And they're all important, but I guess Nilsson focuses mostly on cognitive outcomes, especially in academic settings.
Right. Which is often what's most relevant to you as a learner, too.
And that brings us to Bloom's taxonomy, right? I feel like I remember that from school.
You probably do. So for you, Bloom's taxonomy, it's this framework that categorizes different levels of cognitive processes. It goes from really simple thinking skills to super complex ones.
Okay, so what are those levels? Remind me.
So first, there's remembering, like just basic information. Then there's understanding that information. Then you move to applying it in new situations, analyzing it, breaking it down.
Okay, getting more complex.
Right. And then there's synthesizing, which is like creating something new with that knowledge. And finally, there's evaluating, judging the value of it all. The main takeaway is that effective learning, it aims for those higher levels of thinking, not just memorization.
So it's not enough for you to just know the facts. You need to be able to use them, break them down, create new connections, judge their value.
Exactly. Nilsson also mentions Fink's model, which for you is kind of a broader view. It brings in foundational knowledge, application, integration, integrating ideas.
Okay, and then what else?
There's the human dimension, which is about understanding yourself and others in relation to what you're learning. Caring, which is about developing values and interest in the topic. And then learning how to learn.
Wow, there's a lot to it. Ideally, our learning experiences should touch on all of those areas, right?
Ideally, yes.
Okay, and I remember something Nilsson said that I thought was really insightful. It's that the true cognitive level of a learning outcome, it isn't just about the words you use, to describe it. It's about how the material is presented and what you're actually asked to do with it.
Yes, that's huge. Like, for you, simply defining a term is a lower level cognitive pass if you're just given the definition. But if you have to figure out the definition yourself based on examples, that's much higher level thinking.
So you have to think about how you're actually engaging with the material.
Absolutely.
That is a really important distinction.
Okay.
Moving on. Let's talk about critical thinking and self-regulated learning.
Essential.
They sound like key skills for being an effective learner.
They are. So critical thinking, it's more than just having certain skills, It's also about those habits of mind, being willing to put in the effort, being open-minded, admitting when you're wrong.
So being able to step back and look at things objectively.
Exactly. Nilsson mentions things like intellectual humility, honesty, fairness. Those are all part of critical thinking.
It sounds like almost a way of approaching information, like as much as a skill set.
It is. And it's also important for you to be aware of those, internal things that can get in the way. Psychological defense mechanisms, like denying evidence that contradicts your beliefs.
It's easy to fall into those traps.
Very easy. Now, self-regulated learning, this is about taking an active role in your own learning journey. So you observe how you learn, what works best for you.
So you analyze and assess your own progress.
Exactly. You're becoming aware of your own thinking process. It's metacognitive.
So you're not just passively receiving information, you're actively shaping the way you learn.
You are. You think about how meaningful the material is to you, what strategies you're using, how you approach problems, how your understanding changes over time. It's powerful.
Very cool. Okay, so we've talked about who you are as a learner, the principles of how learning works. Let's get into the how, like the role of different teaching methods.
Yes. Whether you're the one teaching or the one learning.
Right.
And the key here is alignment. The methods should match your learning outcomes. Nilsson really emphasizes that active learning techniques are more effective than passively listening.
So you're actually involved in the process, not just soaking things up.
Right. And methods like interactive lectures, discussions, group work, those can be amazing, but they have to be done well. The tasks and questions you use really matter.
And so it's not just about having a discussion, it's about having a focused discussion that makes you think.
Yes. Nilsson also highlights inquiry-guided learning as a super strong approach.
What's that? Exactly.
So inquiry-guided learning, it's things like case studies and problem-based learning. You're tackling real-world problems.
It sounds more engaging.
Much more. And it encourages you to really think critically.
So we touched on this before, but I think it's worth revisiting. The power of visuals in learning.
Oh, yes. Super important. Nilsson just keeps hammering this point home. Visuals are so effective for your learning and your memory. And it's not about aesthetics. It's about how our brains work.
It's like science backs this up.
Yeah.
So remind me about dual coding theory. How does that work?
Okay, so dual coding theory basically says that your brain, it processes information in two ways, verbally and visually.
Okay, so if you're reading and looking at images.
You're processing it twice, which helps you remember it better.
So a good diagram or concept map, it's not just an extra, it's really tapping into how your brain learns best.
Exactly. They give you that structure, that organization.
This has been a really cool deep dive into how we learn. So let's summarize the key points for you, our listener.
Okay, so first, understanding your audience is crucial, whether it's yourself or someone you're teaching. Then you have to use learning principles that work with your brain, like pattern recognition, chunking, spaced practice.
And design your learning with clear goals, goals that make you think, not just memorize.
Yes. You also want to foster critical thinking and self-awareness in your learning. Choose methods that support those goals. And don't forget visuals. They can be incredibly helpful.
So think about it. These principles aren't just for the classroom.
Right. They apply to everything. Your personal growth, hobbies, even just understanding like complex news stories.
It really makes you think about how you learn, throughout your life. Which of these insights resonated most with you? And if you were to guide someone else's learning, what would you try?
Maybe you'll even dive deeper into Linda Nilsson's book. Check out some more strategies.
That's a great idea. Ultimately, understanding and improving how you learn, it's a journey.
An ongoing journey.
So keep exploring and keep refining your approach. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.